Well, it's lovely to be here this morning and to open the conference. Annie made reference to Mobile World Congress. Great to be there again this year. But what was really interesting is not only telco to Techco, but Techco to telco. So, the whole world is converging. Everyone's seemingly offering network solutions. And whether you're a cloud hyperscaler, you're a device company, you're an infrastructure company, very much getting into the telco space, but also the telcos, moving much more with private networks into the solution space. So Division X has been around now for about a year, created really to move us from being a network provider into that more solution space, really focusing on the enablement in the enterprise space of 5G private networks, IoT, edge and cloud solutions to enable conversations with customers that are very much about outcomes, about how they can digitally transform their business. Instead of the normal approaches that telco have about answering RFPs, which are still very much part of our core business, very product centric, very, dare I say, standard products. What we're really after is those wider solution discussions and wider strategic discussions with our customers. If you were to sort of boil down what a telco is, and certainly tier one carriers such as BT, it has a unique place in the B2B ecosystem of their host nations. So in this case, particularly in the UK, we have a relationship with every enterprise customer. We have a huge set of assets, fixed and mobile. And we have a brand that can really sort of adapt and not just be a trusted provider, especially for public sector, but actually a brand that can move into other spaces and can convene others and support others to have those wider conversations. So we are spending a lot of time in BT having those wider conversations. And the reason for that, I think, is quite obvious to everyone in over the last 3 or 4 years in particular. The digital transformation and the need to use digital to be more efficient and more competitive has never been more obvious. The pandemic showed that supply chain consistency and sovereignty, operating a remote workforce, digitizing our assets was just not optional anymore. It was absolutely essential. So a huge focus on that. And at the same time, challenges to get hold of electrical components and the products needed. So a big bow wave of demand and an inability of supply. And that supply constraints continued. The pandemic didn't help it, but also things like the Russian-Ukraine war, although that has been in terms of accelerating innovation, especially in the digital space and the future character of conflict, it also created more disruption. You overlay on that the energy crisis as well, and teetering on recession. That the need to invest in digital solutions, a need to continue to innovate, to reduce dependency on long drawn out supply chains, to automate your business processes and compete aggressively with in a resource constrained environment is really important. And right at the heart of that is digitalization, digital transformation, Industry 4.0, the convergence of operational technologies, information technologies. These are the macro themes that we are seeing in the enterprise community. And that is the accelerant for this wider discussion about moving from a telco to a techco. Our customers are asking us to help. That is the reality with this trusted national institution where you're not going to get fired for choosing a local operator, but actually the local operator has a real opportunity to bring in the best in class to help support those industries compete and be more efficient. So what are we doing about BT? I mean, BT is just incredible in terms of its R&D and its innovation and its investment. We are one of the largest investors in the UK in terms of fiber and 5G, and also from an R&D perspective, 2.8 billion in R&D over the last 5 years, and that's based in the UK, which is quite unique. It is focusing on customer solutions, so not just around products. So it's knitting together the 5G, IoT, edge compute, cloud, and AI solutions, and really, with 5G in particular, it enables us to be really disruptive and help transform and modernize those key industries, in particular manufacturing, health, port, transport, logistics. And that's really what we're doubling down on in those key verticals. To help do that, we created Division X. We've been building that business over the last year, and I'm glad to say it's really resonating strongly, both internally and externally. And I'll talk a little bit about how we're working with partners in a very different way at pace and scale to deliver more complete solutions for CIOs and CDOs, so that they can have confidence that BT has the right set of partners and solutions for them as they help transform their business. So on joining the company, really focusing on a new conversation, moving away from those RFPs, moving away from just selling phones and broadband, to really looking to connect machines. And really focusing on connectivity, which is what we're known for at one end, but also security, what I would call a solution sandwich, secure connectivity. And in between that, using partners to deliver asset tracking, condition-based monitoring, productivity applications. These are the things that businesses need in order to be more efficient and more competitive. So that, our focus is connectivity in a secure manner, providing an end-to-end solution for security, and really working with partners to do those other applications. And therefore, to get the sales teams and my specialist sales teams asking those questions, which we haven't been naturally asking, around operational technologies, around machines. So who connects your machines? Where are your machines? What state are your machines in? How sustainable, efficient, and productive are your machines? And then finally, how secure are your machines? And that's a very different conversation to just connecting people. It's about helping these businesses, manage their assets and become more effective and efficient. In terms of verticals, it's covering those key verticals where, the need for digitization is more advanced. It's more obvious, in particular, the use of private networks, whether it's a smart factory, a hospital, a port, a distribution center, or a stadium. These are areas which are absolutely, core to sort of private 5G, but also in areas where, having a hyper-connected space allows you to offer, truly resilient applications and use IoT in an industrial way. And I think for me, private networks are an accelerant of IoT. They bring that resilience. They bring that, contained hyper-connected space to life, and things like automation, remote monitoring, and remote equipments, it become real. These have come out of the science lab, and now these use cases are real. So providing the connectivity is absolutely fundamental, but we're now seeing customers wanting to automate and use that hyper-connected space to be more productive, to run their systems, to run digital twins. And that is where it gets really exciting. And that is right at the heart of moving from a telco to a techco, because it's extending our conversations into how we help them run their business. And a lot of that isn't just about the solution. It's about the return on investment. It's about the business case. And we're finding that we need, having conversations about helping businesses strategically transform and work out what are those use cases and applications needed to really address the pain points, to be more efficient and competitive. A really different approach to just answering an RFP for connectivity. Connectivity is the underlying enabler, and doing that in a secure manner is absolutely key. But it's the use cases that sit on top of that connectivity to address those those business issues which are important. Right at the heart of this are private networks, and these are enabling Industry 4.0. This is very much enabled by 5G, and it's about increasing the agility, whether it's being able to re-platform a manufacturing plant because you haven't got that fixed infrastructure you're so dependent on, whether it's about reducing operating costs because you can connect the machines and reduce the number of manual interventions you have to do. It's increasing productivity. You can use digital twins to mirror the factory, so your product development and prototyping are completely speeded up. Whether it's at worker safety through digital vision, AI, where you can actually monitor how people are, how safe people are being. And you've got sustainability as well, the reduction of waste based on a more heavily automated process. So you know, that there's a huge set of opportunities in private networks to be more efficient and more competitive. 5G is, for me, the enterprise transformation bearer. It's you know, quite clearly of interest in the consumer space, but where we can really see monetary value and transformative potential is in the 5G space. And this is where, you know, we're seeing businesses look at it and go, well, actually, I can turn this plant into a smart factory. I can embed 5G private networks in it, which will enable me to automate, which will enable me to transform my business processes, which will enable me to be more efficient and more competitive, which will enable me to process data at the edge, so I can actually control in a secure manner at the site exactly what I need to make my business work. But it can also interface into the public network. So it's not just a fixed site, and that, you know, symbiosis between public and private network is super exciting. But, you know, those new use cases, whether it's preventative maintenance, remote monitoring, process automation, are now absolutely front and center to what we're seeing in terms of the innovation based on 5G private networks. And it is that digital workplace, which and digital and highly connected space, which is acting as a catalyst for technology convergence. For me, you know, IT and the ability to use Wi-Fi to connect your iPads and your IT systems, that's a given. OT, the ability to connect your machines and your assets, and can then integrate OT and IT systems together within a private network space. You know, the opportunities are multiply in terms of how you can be more efficient and more effective. The data you're getting off your network, your data you're getting off your machines, the data you can then use to make business decisions much quicker and faster and more effectively is really exciting. And I think we're only in the foothills of understanding the potential that private networks and more enterprise-grade solutions and use cases using private networks can actually deliver. And that is where it's super exciting at the moment. I'm often asked, you know, what are the reasons why organizations, you know, need private 5G or 5G private networks? You know, mobility is absolutely fundamental, and it's not just in building mobility, it's also machines and robots that move out of buildings. It's deeply congested RF locations. So if you're in a distribution center, it's basically high degrees of metal. You've got a Faraday cage effect. Wi-Fi is less than optimal. Or if you're deep in a mine, you've got a congested RF. And the ability to connect, you know, high location, high accuracy location solutions are challenged. With 5G, you have your own network. The network congestion is less. Your latency is much more improved, and therefore you've got that resilient communications. And once you've got that resiliency, you don't have to have as much infrastructure, whether it's fixed or Wi-Fi based infrastructure, and they can complement each other. For me, the bit that's, you know, that I love the sound of is a sort of 5G LAN, the local area network. That's what we're looking at here. It's replacing your fixed LAN with a wireless LAN, and therefore having you know, greater ability to innovate and be more flexible. It's all about sensors, connecting sensors at the edge, and you know, sensors are proliferating to get the data back from these various OT systems back into that cellular network, being able to orchestrate it, make and monitor and improve business critical processes. Is that reliable coverage? And it's also the ability to track and trace assets. That's, you know, at the end of the day, these are the macro needs of any business that's dealing in any sort of product-centric business. And therefore, this is replicable and scalable across, you know, multiple industries. A really good example of something that we brought to life in record quick time, and we used one of our partners to do this. In fact, back at Mobile World Congress last year, we started the original conversation, and it took us 15 weeks to get to market. With digital vision, this is video-based AI, where you're optimizing operations and you're inspecting product and enhancing worker security and safety through the use of video. And obviously 5G private networks enable that high bandwidth, low latency, high definition video. And therefore with video AI, you know, we can really improve efficiency and optimize worker safety using these off-the-shelf solutions, and that's through a partner that of Atos that we've been working with, and this is resonating strongly across a lot of the use cases that we're seeing. It's almost an extension of CCTV, which again is a really good application that we're seeing picked up on private networks. But this is taking the intelligence to the next level, and we're starting to see, with AR and video-based AI, moving more into that sort of metaverse to applications, using high bandwidth, high density, immersive experience based on the hyper connectivity of this 5G LAN. And it's something that I think video is a killer application of the 5G LAN, because it's there, it's highly resilient, you can make business decisions based on some of the super exciting applications we're seeing, like digital vision with this video-based AI proposition. So how are we delivering so far? Well, the smart ports on 5G private networks, we speak a lot about Belfast Harbour. This has been very much our showcase, although we've also launched into Port of Tyne, and we're seeing a lot of interest in the harbours, in particular in the UK. And condition-based monitoring there, remote assets, is very much part of that solution. It's a very congested space. Belfast Harbour has a residential bit, has offices, it has theatres where they film Game of Thrones, and you've obviously got a working port and a railhead. It's a highly congested, challenging space from connectivity perspective, and that was the reason we deployed a private network. Smart manufacturing, the use, as mentioned, of digital twins and virtual reality. Hyperbat is one of the largest private EV battery companies in the UK, and they use our digital twin technology to fast develop and prototype their electric batteries. And smart health, lighting up hospitals and using our 5G network for ambulance services. These are great, symbolic and dare I say, proving the concept of 5G enabled solutions. And you can see from the bottom, a portfolio of new applications that we're rolling out, whether it's immersive spaces into education, digital vision as I said, video-based AI, and then the other, IoT-based applications such as remote operations, asset tracking, vehicle telematics. Seeing a lot of interest in drones as well. That's part of the portfolio, condition-based monitoring and automation of vehicles. So to hang these applications off, you need that hyper-connected space. But this is very much moving us from being a telco where we're just dealing in the connectivity and the security layer into providing more solutions. And how are we doing that? Because BT skills is very much in the network layer. What are we doing to give the CIO, the CDOs, the confidence that we have those wider skills and experiences? And what we've done is we've taken a view of the solution stack and said, well, we do security and connectivity. Who's going to do the application layer? Well, we've been working with Atos on that. Who's going to do the infrastructure piece for the networks? We're working with Ericsson. Who's going to do the cloud services? That's Microsoft, a key strategic partner. And then who's going to do the strategic digital maturity assessments, the strategic analysis? Who's going to talk to the CEO and the COO and the strategy team so we can have that wider strategic discussion? Well, that's PwC. We need a professional services company. And we're all playing in lane. There are some overlaps which we're managing, but actually providing a group, cohering a group of the world's best providers of their various areas of that solution stack in front of the CIOs and the CDOs is super powerful. I've got a session with all of these tomorrow at an industry level, discussing water, smart water, what is happening in the water industry. And this is really exciting, in helping transform a whole industry. How do we discuss with that industry, what are the pain points? How can we help address those pain points? And how can BT, as the leading telco in the UK, help cohere and pull together and orchestrate those wider collaborative discussions to present more complete solutions into the industries and to help them on their journey to digital transformation. And this is a real force for good. We did it as a wanna, so to actually choose 4 partners and start working with them. We meet every month. This has working groups hanging off it. It's very much around capability as well as go-to-market. So it's very much about how BT is operating differently, is thinking differently. And that's what's super exciting. You know, we're not saying we can do it all ourselves. We are leveraging other people's customer bases, their relationships, their subject matter knowledge of verticals, of certain verticals, where they're seeing real traction. We then swarm together and we go and support them and build business together. And I think it's super exciting. So that's really it from me. I'm very keen to hear your questions. Back to you, Annie.
Okay, so that was interesting. I think our attendees are still waiting for the coffee to kick in. So in the meantime, I've got some questions, please, Mark. So first of all, please, could you just say a little bit about how Division X and BT Business sit together? And also maybe a little bit, if anybody's not familiar, about how BT Business is evolving.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So BT Business is being established from the 1st of April. So there's still, you know, quite a lot going on to get to that position. Super exciting from my perspective, because it's coming together of the global business and the UK enterprise business, which Division X has been actually supporting from the start, both business areas, because we provide solutions both domestically and globally, especially in IoT. And it's really exciting to see that coming together of those two businesses so that we can be more coherent in front of our customers and provide solutions at a global level. So BT Business, really exciting. Division X really resonated with the market and also internally. So that's going to be the sort of innovation identity going forward, which is great. And all the stuff that we've just been talking about is going to be front and center in terms of that move from being a telco into a techco, and really focusing on the core assets, the core network assets around 5G and IoT and security. So absolutely reinforcing and accelerating at a global scale what we've been doing in DivX.
Okay, and the coffee's done its work. So we have a couple of questions. So Alan Farr asks, I noticed that Intel announced its withdrawal from the 5G connected device market. Yes. I don't think they think the market is growing as quickly as expected. What's your view, Mark?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting development. I think in some areas it's slower than expected as well. I see that with 5G gateways. But actually, where we're talking about private networks, they're primarily based on 5G. One of the frustrating things that is taking time is actually the devices in the ecosystem because of supply constraints, and it's still early on. We can't get the full range of 5G devices. That is improving. So I think it's taking time to get the right devices onto the right use cases. But we're starting to see more choice. We're starting to see more devices that are relevant in the 5G domains that we're talking about. But yeah, no, I think it's been a little slower than people have expected, but we're starting to see some real traction now.
Well, I guess we've had quite a lot of very large events that you referred to at the start of your session that were not exactly in the plan, from COVID to war in Europe to geopolitical issues. Andreas asks, please can you elaborate on the price model principles for the businesses you offer? I think your business offers. So I think this is all about the pricing models for business case and use case.
It's a really good question. It's a really good question. So for us, it's about moving into the solution space, and whether that's a managed service or licensed models. What we're very keen not to do is just sell a load of kit and then leave the enterprise to sort of manage it on their own. Running private networks is we are a network operator. Networks are 365, 24/7 living, breathing thing, and therefore there is an ongoing service relationship which actually people don't tend to talk about. And I think that's, along with the innovation to continue to develop applications on top of your private network, I think is a real opportunity for operators to get into. So I think there's going to be, in sort of balance between CapEx and OpEx, depending on the affordability of the solution. Obviously, there's an initial investment up front, but then an ongoing OpEx managed service fee. And then on top of that, various application stacks and propositions that can be brought on. So it's a bit of a framework agreement as opposed to a traditional sort of RFP type solution. We're also seeing some really interesting models, especially around things like ports and stadium, where you've actually got sort of tenancy agreements going on. So the port would actually procure the private network, and they would then resell that. Or with the operator, offer that to the tenants, and the tenants would then procure the service. So there are a number of indirect and direct models that I'm starting to see in the market as well. It isn't just a case of the enterprise. A number of these organizations, whether it's a shopping center or a stadia or a port, actually run the site, and the people who benefit would actually be the tenants in the site. So it's more varied, and I think with things like the PwC discussion, we're spending a lot of time on business casing, return on investment piece. What's the right upfront investment? How do you invest in the right solution for what you need now, but it's got future proof for the future, going forward? What's the right balance between CapEx and OpEx, given some of the constraints that people have in liquidity and cash flow at the moment? I think, for me, innovation commercially is almost as important as innovation technically in this space at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a question from Mehrdad, who says he just wants you to clarify whether you see 5G public network as an extension of the 5G macro public network as opposed to a separate, completely private entity.
It's a really good point. We're seeing a variety of approaches, and it's not one size fits all. And it's also where we're seeing the most interest early on is where the public network is not as dense and the coverage is not as good as it needs to be, because they invariably in difficult locations, semi-rural, ports being a good example, very large sites where actually the investment from the public network, it just hasn't been warranted. And therefore, you're starting to see standalone on-premise private networks in some, in those areas, and that makes sense. We're then seeing more hybrid networks where across a number of sites or even on the same site, the private network is needed for a small part of the site. Whether in a port, for example, it's the 12 cranes by the dockside that need automation, that's where the private network is. And then the rest of it is using the sort of hybrid, the public network, but in a private instance. So using the cell towers and the spectrum to provide that more secure solution, and then interfacing into the public network. The bit I think we're starting to also see and talked about is slicing as well. So the ability to operate quality of service instances, higher quality of services, service instances using the public network. So a private instance, but using the RAN and the spectrum of your public network. That is absolutely where the industry is going. But I think if there is no network coverage of that site, then that doesn't work either. So you do need a portfolio approach based on the network topography that you have in that area. The other thing that you've got to consider is network congestion. So in urban areas where there's a lot of network density, there are more challenges to doing some of the use cases than in semi-rural or rural areas where there's no network congestion. So, from an operator's perspective, network planning, designing the right solution for the site, is really important. What I'm referring to are the larger, more telco grade deployments which is where the industry is at the moment. I think for the smaller, sites, this won't be as much of an issue, but for where it needs to interface into the public network at some scale, the network considerations can't be ignored.
Okay, and Andreas asks, what are the key monetization challenges of the use cases beyond major ports and stadia, and how can you replicate them across other industries? And I think that whole thing of scale rather than reinventing a model every time is quite pertinent, I would imagine, to profitability and speed.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think replicability and scale is something that we're very minded to. A lot of these deployments are taking too long. They're too complex. I think what I've seen is in terms of the solutions themselves for private networks, the variety is definitely increasing. The one size does not fit all. There are some players who are better placed in doing the sort of telco grade solution, industrial carrier grade solution, but we're also seeing coming out of the US in particular more sort of 5G LAN, Wi-Fi type solutions, which are based on devices at a much lower price point and a solution that can be more easily rolled out. So a sort of private network in a box type scenario. So what I think is segmentation is really important. What is the right solution for the right segment? What's the right level of investment in each of those segments? If you've got a total addressable market, ports, it's only a certain size, so you can't just focus on that market. What we need to do is go not just in the value space, but also into the volume space, and have solutions where you can really scale and get some more mainstream traction. What I would love to do is bring private networks to all conversations, because they can be an extension of your broader connectivity conversation. If you're selling a mobile phone contract, you can say, well, actually, if I deliver you a private network and enhance your coverage in this site, then you can sell more mobile phones. So connecting it more into the core business. Selling more network, using our network, monetizing 5G is one of our main core strategic priorities in BT. So making 5G private networks mainstream and part of every conversation, along with IoT, has to be the key focus, rather than just having a sort of cottage industry off to the side where you're building bespoke solutions. That's not going to scale. It needs to be replicated across all industries. Where I'm starting to see real traction is where big Wi-Fi deployments have taken place, where there are challenges. In particular, I mentioned distribution centers where you're deploying hundreds of devices. You've got congested RF, and you need to be able to have machines go outside the buildings as well, so the Wi-Fi doesn't work. Where I think this is a mainstream use case. There are many verticals that's relevant to from a warehousing perspective. I think something like that, where you are absolutely complementing and, dare I say, in areas replacing Wi-Fi for operational technologies, that I think is super exciting, because that's mainstream. Wi-Fi and the ability to connect in building solutions is a known sales motion, and people get that. I think private 5G as part of that will accelerate the use cases and get people using 5G. We need to do that, and we also need to do the more telco grade deployments like we're doing in places like Belfast Harbour and various manufacturing sites.
Mark, I'm really sorry I have to stop you there because we're out of time. It's a great shame, because I think we could go on for a considerable time on this. So thank you for a terrific opening keynote, and we hope to see you back again at another of our events in the not too distant future. Thank you very much indeed, and the audience for your great questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annie. Take care. Bye.